I'm Andrea Nakayama from Replenish PDX, and this is the video section of your Sweet Tooth Bitter Truth home study class. Today we are in the kitchen with alternative sweeteners. As you can see, there are so many alternative sweeteners here, and this is the way to really kick your sugar habit once and for all. This is the way to indulge your sweet tooth in really nutritious ways that aren't depleting you otherwise. Today what we're going to do is review all these sweeteners and talk about where you might find them, where you can use them, how you can store them, and just look at all of them so you can see what they actually look like. All these sweeteners, or some of them, are highlighted in the recipe packet of your Sweet Tooth Bitter Truth class. And you can learn more about all of that at www.sweettooth.com. So the first sweetener I wanted to talk to you about today is cane sugar, just refined sugar, very quickly. We talk about this a lot in the audio section of the course, but I do want you to know that sugar cane is refined and beet sugar is also highly refined, and both come from genetically modified crops. So when you're buying things, don't be fooled that beet sugar is from a natural substance. It actually is as genetically modified as the cane sugar, and there's a lot of processing involved to make that sugar happen. So that is something that you want to look for on your labels. The next in the sweeteners that we want to look at is sucanat. It's also, you can find unrefined cane crystals that are called Florida cane crystals or Rapadura. And what these are less refined sugar cane. So this is going to have some of the minerals and nutrients that we talked about in the audio class still in the crystals. I actually don't keep this in my house normally. I went out and bought this just to show it to you today because I think there are other more viable alternatives that are better for you. But if you're making an initial change or you're going to a party and making a recipe that you've always depended on, this is one step toward a healthier solution than using the refined sugar. Next on our list is brown sugar, which I do not have in my kitchen. And brown sugar is typically white sugar with some molasses added back in, so not much added benefit there. When it comes to molasses, however, we do have a lot of benefits. Molasses has a lot of minerals in it, especially the blackstrap molasses. It has a lot of minerals and enzymes, and it especially has a lot of iron. So I found that I could work around blackstrap molasses or molasses in most recipes with other lower glycemic sweeteners. The one place that I find I do need to rely on molasses is for gingerbread. So always with gingerbread, cookies or cake, I tend to still rely on a little molasses. Some baked bean recipes I might still use a little molasses because we're going to have enough fat, fiber, and protein to slow things down, and there's a very particular flavor that the molasses imparts. But molasses is high in glycemic, so I try to avoid it or use it in moderation when I can. Next on the list is fruit juice sweetener, and the company that makes fruit juice sweetener is called Wax Orchards. You can also find cookies or things, packaged foods that include fruit juice sweetener. I'm not a big fan of the use of fruit juice sweetener because the fruit is often not organic. And when you're using something like grape, you definitely want, if you look at the Environmental Working Group has a list called the Top 10 Dirty Dozen, and those are the fruits that you definitely want to be eating organic because they're more exposed to the pesticides. Grapes are way up there. So fruit sweeteners often include grape. I believe Wax Orchards includes pear juice concentrate and pineapple juice concentrate. And again, it's not organic. This is one of their chocolate sauces. I now tend to make my own chocolate sauce, but this is an option for a quick chocolate sauce for ice cream or for dipping strawberries or something like that. So that's your fruit juice sweetener. Again, not one of my favorite, but still a possibility. Next on the list is date sugar. And this one is called Aunt's Patty's organic date sugar. And date sugar is made from the pressing of dates, the pressing and dehydrating of dates. So it has a lot of the minerals that dates have in them, not the complete minerals and nutrients and fiber that the actual dates have in them, which we'll talk about later, but it does contain some of those nutrients in them. So date sugar I tend to use as a topping instead of as an ingredient in things. So I'll use it mixed with cinnamon for cinnamon toast or for a crumb topping on something. It doesn't dissolve really easily, which is why I choose to use it on top of things instead of in things. But it's a nice way to get a really delicious flavor, like I said, on a crumble topping or on a crisp, any kind of crisp that you're making. And again, it's what I used to use for cinnamon toast, but I have a different preference for that now. The next on our list, and we're kind of moving in glycemic index here, is raw honey. And raw honey is one of our oldest sweeteners. Raw honey is made from the bees that are pollinating the different flowers or plants. So raw honey comes from different sources. When you go here in Portland, we have farmers that are beekeepers, and there's one that I go to that has all his different, he knows which they are, which one's black clover, which one is meadow foam, so each of what those bees are pollinating affects the flavor of the honey, and it's really fun to taste the different honeys. So honey is high glycemic. Raw honey is going to be a little lower glycemic because of all the enzymes and nutrients in it. It's going to slow that digestion of the sugars down a little bit. And raw honey has a lot of great properties. It's helpful for seasonal allergies and coughs. If you're using it for seasonal allergies, it's great to find a raw honey that's local to you. And again, that is raw, so in teas that you're sipping constantly. Where I use raw honey are in raw desserts, and also I'll use it in baked desserts too. So again, look for raw honey, ideally local to you. The next on our list, I have a little list off to my corner here, is maple syrup. Maple syrup is also one of our oldest sweeteners, just naturally from the sap of the trees. And there are two forms. You get the grade A, which is the first pressing that comes from the trees, and then grade B is the second drip that comes from the trees. And the grade B is darker. So I always look for organic grade B. When something's darker, it tends to have a higher mineral content. So you have the grade B organic because not organic trees, maple trees, are often plugged with formaldehyde. So you want to look for organic always, and ideally grade B. And I like to use maple syrup in cakes and things that need a little density, a little lightness to them. Our house is gluten-free and egg-free, and so sometimes it's hard to get that rise that you might get in a cake. And one of my very favorite recipes is a chocolate cake recipe that I use for chocolate cupcakes that comes from a cookbook, a gluten-free cookbook called the Flying Apron Cookbook. And I love that chocolate cupcake recipe. It's really moist, and it relies on quite a bit of maple syrup and grapeseed oil to give it that lightness. So maple syrup is great in, I'm going to use it in things like cakes most often where I need an extra bit of sweetener. Next on our list is the coconut sugar, which is really my favorite. So I'm going to take a break here and come back for part 2 where I will talk more about coconut sugar.